You snake. Jiyoon froze. Ari, please, she whispered. I can explain. No. Just one word. Final. Silence swallowed the room. Ariel didn't blink. She already knew what this was. Betrayal. I bet you're wondering what just happened, honestly? Me too. But stay with me, because from this point on, this story takes a turn you won't see coming. Ariel Freeman had built her life carefully. A content creator whose audience trusted her because she felt real, not manufactured, not polished beyond recognition. Jiyoon Lim had been there from the beginning, long before the audience, before the brand deals, before Ariel's name meant anything. She was the person who knew the version of Ariel that didn't exist online. And that made her dangerous in a way Ariel never considered. They were together the morning the grocery store incident happened. It was a Saturday in late spring, and they had decided to wander through an upscale imported goods market in the city's wealthiest district. Ariel had her phone out, taking pictures of the packaging because she found the typography beautiful. Jiyoon was reading the back of a Japanese whiskey bottle and narrating the description in a dramatic accent that made Ariel laugh loud enough to draw looks. The woman approached without being invited, mid-50s, structured cream blazer, the posture of someone who had never been told to wait. She looked at Ariel the way certain people looked at things that didn't belong in their space, a long, measured scan that started at her sneakers and ended somewhere just above her head. Excuse me, the woman said pleasantly. Too pleasantly. Are you lost? Ariel looked up. I'm sorry. You might want to check if you're in the right place. The woman smiled. I only want to make sure you're comfortable. Ariel felt it land. She understood what was beneath the politeness. Jiyoon stiffened beside her. I'm completely comfortable, Ariel said. Thank you for checking. The woman's smile tightened. Of course. I only ask because the prices here can be quite surprising. I appreciate the concern, Ariel said, holding eye contact without blinking. But I've shopped here before. I know the prices. Jiyoon stepped forward. She's a regular customer. So am I. Is there something else we can help you with? The woman looked between them, recalibrated, and left without another word. But as she moved away, Ariel caught the shape of her expression. Not embarrassed. Irritated, the kind that comes when surrender is expected and denied. They didn't think about her again that afternoon. They couldn't have known she would become relevant. They couldn't have known her name was Madam Young, that she was the aunt of a man they had never heard of, and that she left that market carrying a specific and personal dislike for Ariel Freeman. 2 weeks passed before the second thing happened. Ariel had spent the afternoon filming architecture in the cultural district, the old guild buildings and restored stone facades that she had wanted to document for a series on the city's history. She had been there for about an hour when a convoy of black vehicles slid to a stop along the restricted lane outside the largest restored building on the block. Security moved quickly, clearing the area with the quiet efficiency of people who had done it many times before. One of them spotted her camera. Delete the footage. Ariel lowered her camera. I wasn't filming the vehicles. I was filming the building. Delete it. I'm on a public street. I have the right to document public architecture. The man stepped closer. I'm going to ask once more. And I'm going to answer the same way. She was aware that this was the kind of confrontation most people would have backed away from. She was also aware that she had done nothing wrong and had no intention of behaving as though she had. Attention had begun to gather around the scene when a calm voice came from behind the security line. Let me see. The voice belonged to a man in his 30s, dressed without effort in a charcoal coat. He had the look of someone who never needed to raise his voice to command a room. He walked over, took the camera from his own security man's extended hand, and scrolled through the last several minutes of footage with the focused attention of someone checking a report. He handed it back to Ariel. You were filming the building, he said. That's what I said. Something in his expression shifted. Not a smile. Something quieter than that. That angle is wrong. Use the east side. No explanation. Ariel had stared at him for a long moment. Who are you? Someone who knows the building, he said. Then he turned and walked back toward the entrance, and his security moved to follow. Ariel stood on the street with a feeling she couldn't immediately name. She walked to the east side. He had been right. The light fell perfectly across the facade from that angle, illuminating the carved detail in the upper arch in a way that made the image feel like something from another century. She took the photograph, uploaded it that night with a short caption about the district's architecture and went to bed. She woke up to 8,000 notifications. Her followers had recognized the figure visible through the building's glass entrance doors in the background of her photograph. The man who had directed her to the east side was Kang Junho. The name meant almost nothing to Ariel. To the rest of the city, it apparently meant a great deal. Jiyoon had sent 15 messages before Ariel had finished her coffee. Ari, do you understand who that is? A man who knew about architecture? He runs half the city's private development sector. His family has been in serious business for 3 generations. Junho specifically is known for being impossible to reach. Nobody gets a photograph with him. Nobody. Ariel looked at the image again. She hadn't been trying to photograph him. She had been photographing a building. She laughed at the irony. Jiyoon had not found it funny. She had found it fascinating in a way that Ariel, at the time, had read as excitement on her behalf. The gallery opening came 3 weeks later. Ariel attended because a brand she collaborated with had sponsored the event. She had not expected Kang Junho to be there. She also had not expected that when their eyes met across the room, he would walk toward her rather than past her. The photographer, he said. The architecture critic, she said. He had laughed at that. A real one. It surprised him, she could tell, the way genuine amusement always surprised people who spent most of their time in rooms where everything was performed. They spoke for almost 40 minutes. It didn't feel like networking. He understood the buildings better than she expected. She understood the light better than he expected. And neither of them looked at the art around them. Ariel called Jiyoon from the car on the way home. We talked for almost an hour, she said. He's nothing like what I expected. He's actually interesting. What did he say? Jiyoon's voice was warm and attentive. Tell me everything. She told Jiyoon everything. Jiyoon listened closely, asking questions and reacting at all the right moments. The invitations started coming after that. Private events. Closed showcases. Fundraisers she had never had access to before. And at some of them, Kang Junho was there again, as if the photograph had opened a door neither of them understood yet. Jiyoon accompanied her to some. To others she wasn't invited. Ariel didn't register this as a problem. She assumed Jiyoon understood. She assumed Jiyoon was happy for her. She assumed this because for 7 years Jiyoon had always been happy for her. Jiyoon noticed the shift in small ways. People remembered Ariel's name. Forgot hers. She was always introduced the same way now, Ariel's friend. The private event where everything turned was held at a rooftop venue in the East Quarter. Ariel had been there for an hour when Jiyoon found herself standing near the catering station, waiting for a drink that was taking too long, when she recognized the woman from the grocery store. Madam Young recognized her too. The friend, she said. You were with the girl at the market. Ariel, Jiyoon said. Yes. You defended her. Madam Young studied her with a precision that felt like measurement. That was loyal. She's my best friend. Of course. The older woman accepted her drink. You know she's spending time with my nephew. The information hit harder than expected. She had known it abstractly. But hearing it phrased as my nephew, in that particular tone, made it suddenly territorial in a way she hadn't prepared for. I know, Jiyoon said. She's unsuitable, Madam Young said plainly. I want you to understand that my concerns are not personal. They are practical. She is charming in a certain way. But she is not the right fit for what our family represents. Jiyoon opened her mouth to defend Ariel. She found the words slower than usual. You, on the other hand, Madam Young continued, present yourself with considerable refinement. You understand discretion. You understand what these circles require. She paused. You seem far more appropriate. Jiyoon went home that night and told herself it was nothing. She told herself the woman was deluded and her opinion held no weight. She told herself she had not felt anything when the compliment landed. But she thought about it for 4 days. Madam Young called. Then called again. Then sent a lunch invitation that felt too specific to be casual. Jiyoon accepted because she told herself she was only curious. She would hear what the woman had to say and that would be the end of it. It was not the end of it. The private meetings multiplied. Madam Young was subtle and deliberate in the way she worked, never asking Jiyoon outright to do anything. She simply talked, asked questions, and listened carefully. And slowly, across several weeks and several meals, Jiyoon found herself answering things she should not have been answering. Small details at first. The kind of event Ariel preferred. The kind of response that made her uncertain. The social situations that made her feel out of place. Then larger things. Things said in confidence. Things shared in private. The vulnerability behind the polished posts. The insecurity that Ariel had never once let her audience see. Jiyoon told herself she wasn't betraying anyone. She told herself it was only conversation. She told herself Madam Young was harmless. She knew because each time she left one of those lunches, she felt a specific kind of sick that had nothing to do with the food. Madam Young arranged the meeting 3 weeks later. She was careful about it. She told Jiyoon only that she wanted to introduce her to someone, that it was a small social gathering, nothing formal. Jiyoon arrived to find a private dining room with 2 other guests and Kang Junho sitting across the table. He looked at her. Ariel's friend. It wasn't a question. It wasn't warm. It was a statement from someone who had already filed her in a specific category and saw no reason to move her. Madam Young launched enthusiastically into her presentation of Jiyoon's qualities. Her background. Her sensibility. Her refinement. She spoke about Jiyoon as though describing a product she had personally sourced. Junho sat through the first 2 minutes of it with an expression that said he had already made a decision long before he arrived. He cut it short politely but without apology. I appreciate the dinner, Aunt. But this isn't something I'm interested in exploring. He left less than an hour after he arrived. Jiyoon sat in the private dining room with the remains of a meal she had barely touched and a humiliation so complete she could feel it in the back of her throat. Madam Young attempted to reframe what had happened, suggesting that Junho simply needed more time, that his interest in Ariel was a temporary infatuation, that patience was required. Jiyoon nodded and said the right things. But something had hardened in her. Something that had previously been only resentment had become something colder and more deliberate. The family dinner happened 2 weeks later. Ariel was invited by Junho himself, a formal invitation from his family home in the northern district. She was terrified in the way she was only ever terrified by things that genuinely mattered to her. She told Jiyoon about it the night before, sitting on the floor of her apartment with her knees pulled to her chest. What if his mother doesn't like me, she said. She'll love you, Jiyoon said. You're impossible not to like. She had said it with complete sincerity. And beneath the sincerity, quiet and contained, the resentment had sat like a stone. Ariel had worn a rust-colored dress and arrived exactly on time. Madame Kang, Junho's mother, was nothing like the aunt. She was precise and perceptive, and she looked at Ariel with the focused attention of someone who prided themselves on reading people accurately. The aunt sat at the far end of the table and made her disapproval known in the particular way of people who believed themselves too refined for directness, a slight redirection of every compliment, a subtle elevation of her own suggestions over Ariel's contributions, a sequence of questions designed less to learn and more to expose. Ariel answered every one of them with the grace of someone who had grown up learning that composure was a form of power. She did not become defensive. She did not become quiet. She engaged the dinner table as she engaged everything, with the specific warmth of someone who was genuinely present and genuinely interested and entirely unwilling to pretend she was less than she was. By the end of the evening, Madame Kang had asked Ariel 3 personal questions that had nothing to do with status or suitability. The kind of questions people asked when they were actually curious about someone. The aunt had watched this development with visible frustration, her attempts to steer the evening having failed entirely. Jiyoon had not been there that night, but she had heard about it from Madame Young, who reported it with the barely contained fury of someone watching a plan fail in slow motion. The calls between them had become daily. The information Jiyoon provided had become more specific and more damaging, things that could be used at precisely the right moment in precisely the right company. Ariel had noticed nothing. She had been too happy. The gala was held at the end of the month. It was the largest gathering of the season, over 200 guests drawn from the city's oldest families and most influential circles. Ariel arrived with Junho for the first time publicly, and the quiet acknowledgement of that fact moved through the room in the specific way that social information moved through spaces like this, efficiently and without announcement. She had been speaking with him near the main hall's window when the confrontation happened. Jiyoon appeared on her shoulder. Ariel had smiled when she saw her. A genuine one. The instinct of 7 years. Jiyoon. I didn't know you were coming tonight. Jiyoon's expression was different from any expression Ariel had seen on her face before. It was tight and resolved, and underneath the resolution there was something that looked, for just a moment, like grief. Then it closed. "Everyone here keeps talking about how impressive you are," Jiyoon said. Her voice was slightly too controlled. "How did you get here, Ari? Really? One photograph you didn't even mean to take." Ariel had gone still. "What? You were never meant for rooms like this." Jiyoon's voice was rising. The people nearest them had turned. "One accidental photo doesn't make you important. You've been performing this whole time. You got one moment and you wrote it and you convinced yourself it means something about who you are." The room went quiet. Madam Young stepped forward from somewhere to Jiyoon's left. "She's right, you know. The association with this family is entirely circumstantial. The rest of the room deserves to know that." Ariel looked at the two of them. She looked at the way they had positioned themselves. She looked at the practiced quality of Jiyoon's speech, the specific words chosen, the specific accusations leveled. "Jiyoon," she said quietly. "How long?" Jiyoon didn't answer. "How long have you been telling her things about me?" Jiyoon's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then Junho spoke. He spoke with the measured authority of someone who had been waiting, who had known this moment was coming, who had gathered what he needed long before tonight. He addressed the room directly. He confirmed that his aunt had arranged private meetings with Ariel's closest friend. He described what Jiyoon had provided across those meetings, personal details, private insecurities, vulnerabilities weaponized as social ammunition. He described the attempted matchmaking and the failed dinner. He described the campaign his aunt had been running for months, the specific intent of which had been to damage Ariel's standing and manufacture an alternative. He said all of it without anger. That made it worse for them. Anger could be argued with. This was simply information, laid out in sequence, in a room full of witnesses. The aunt's composure cracked visibly. Several guests near her stepped back by a single, telling inch. Jiyoon stood in the center of it all and watched her own name become the conclusion of a story she had not understood she was writing. The hall was silent when Ariel spoke again. "You snake." Jiyoon's face had gone white. "Ari, please. I can explain." No, Ariel's voice was even. Completely even. That surprised even herself. "Don't explain it in front of me." Then Ariel turned away. Not dramatically. Not with performance. Just with the specific finality of someone who had made a decision they would not revisit. She walked away from the center of the room and did not look back. Junho fell into step beside her. He didn't touch her. He didn't speak. He simply walked with her, which was exactly what she needed, someone to be present without requiring her to manage them. They moved through a side corridor and into a private dining room off the main hall. A fire had been lit. The table was set with 2 places. Madame Kong was seated at the far end, a glass of wine in her hand, composed as always, but with a warmth in her eyes that she hadn't tried to conceal tonight. "Sit down," she said to Ariel. Not as a hostess to a guest. The way she might have said it to someone who was simply tired and needed to rest. Ariel sat. She was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that came after something significant, when the body needed a beat to catch up with what the mind had already processed. "She was my best friend," Ariel said finally. "I know," Madame Kong said. 7 years. "I know." Ariel looked at the fire. "I keep going back through every conversation. Every time I told her something private. Every time I thought she was protecting me." She paused. "I don't know how I missed it." "You didn't miss it," Junho said. He was seated across from her, his posture relaxed in the way it only ever was when the performance of the evening was fully behind him. "You trusted someone. That's not a failure of perception. It's a failure on her part." Ariel looked at him for a long moment. "You knew," she said. "Before tonight. You knew something was happening." "I suspected," he said. "I had people looking into it because certain things didn't add up. The information my aunt seemed to have. The specific timing of certain conversations." He paused. "I should have told you sooner. I wanted to be certain before I brought it to you. That was a choice I made, and it's one alone." She held his gaze. There was something in the directness of it, the acknowledgement without deflection, that settled something in her chest. "She told your aunt things that I told her in confidence," Ariel said. "Yes. About my insecurities. About the things I was afraid of." "Yes." Ariel was quiet for another moment. Then something in her expression shifted. "Not peace exactly. Not yet." but the specific clarity that arrived on the other side of grief when the worst of it had been absorbed and what remained was simply truth. Then I know exactly what I lost tonight, she said. And what I didn't. Madame Kong set down her glass. She looked at Ariel with the direct regard of a woman who had spent decades in rooms where most things were obscured and had developed an exacting sensitivity to the things that were not. My sister-in-law has her own history, she said. Her behavior tonight was the culmination of a longer pattern. It doesn't excuse what your friend did. But I want you to understand that nothing Jiun told her changed anything. Not for this family. Not for me, Junho said. He said it simply, without drama. Ariel looked at him. The firelight caught the side of his face and he looked, in that moment, nothing like the figure her followers had recognized in the background of her photograph. He looked like someone sitting at a table after a difficult evening, tired in the honest way, present in the way she had been trying to articulate since that first gallery conversation. The way that meant he was actually here. I don't know what comes next, she said quietly. Neither do I, he said. But I'd prefer to figure it out with you in it. Ariel felt something ease in her chest. Not the pain of the evening. That would take time. But something underneath the pain, something that had been waiting to know whether the ground was solid. It was. She had walked into that hall with a best friend she had trusted for 7 years. She had walked out of it having lost that friendship and gained, in the same evening, the exact kind of clarity that changed the shape of what came after. She had been humiliated publicly, defended publicly, and welcomed privately, not as a guest, not as an outsider moving carefully through an unfamiliar space, but as herself, plainly and without condition. The dinner that followed was quiet and warm and entirely unhurried. Madame Kong spoke to Ariel as though she had already made her decision and saw no reason to revisit it. Junho poured her a glass of something he said she would like better than what was served at the gala, and he was right. Outside the private dining room, the rest of the evening continued without them, the gala guests finding other conversations, the scandal settling into the particular shape that scandals took when the room had processed them and moved on. None of it reached them here. When the evening finally ended and Junho walked Ariel to her car, they stood for a moment in the quiet of the private entrance, the city noise muffled and the night air cool and still. Are you all right? He asked. Ariel considered the question honestly. I'll be all right, she said. Not tonight. But I will be. He nodded. Not with false reassurance. With a specific acknowledgement of someone who understood the difference between comfort and chose truth because he respected her enough to offer it. Then I'll be in touch, he said. You'd better be, she said. He kissed her. Then he smiled. The real one, the one that surprised him, the one she had first seen in the gallery all those weeks ago when she had called him an architecture critic, and he had not expected it. She got into her car. She sat for a moment in the quiet before starting the engine. Through the building's glass doors, she could see the last guests moving through the hall, the evening dissolving into its final conversations. She had gone in with someone she loved and came out alone. The loneliness was real, and it would need to be grieved. But she had also come out knowing something she hadn't known before. She knew what a room looked like when it turned against someone, and what it looked like when it turned toward you. She knew the difference between someone who entered your life to take and someone who entered it to stay. She started the engine. She pulled out of the private entrance and into the city lights. She didn't look back. If this story kept you watching, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next one goes even deeper. Drop a comment below. Are you Team Ariel? Did she handle it right?